Now we're live. Apropos is a conversation between Clojure programmers that you can join in live. We're going to discuss a few Clojure news items and share our opinions on them. Then we'll jump into a REPL and code some exercises or do some demos. If you're joining us live, feel free to comment in the chat and we'll try to address the questions. So first up, we have Ray, who wants to share a bit of news.
Yeah, hi. I want to talk about a bit of what I call valor snatching or glory snatching, because I opened up an issue a few months ago to do with the fact that the Clojure world was very much lacking in documentation about the REPL. Despite the fact that we had all these people like Stuart Holloway, going out there and doing great work, talking about how great REPL-driven development was, and I think we all probably, at least on this show, agree with that. But yet there was a dearth of information on the Clojure website about what REPLs were, how to use them, all the kind of bits and pieces. So I remember them saying, well, if you should open these issues in the Jira and then we'll take a look at them. So I opened up an issue and then, wow, suddenly this guy, Val, has done some magic work and it's been adopted into the Clojure.org website. And now we have REPLs galore. This guy has done an amazing job. So that's the background. Like I say, I'm awesome. This guy, Val's done a decent job with the documentation, but what do the rest of you think?
I think it's awesome. I think it is an awesome guide, and it hits all the nails on the head about why REPL-driven development is great and is very practical in like the sort of tactics and techniques that you need to use at the REPL. I think it's great.
Yeah, we're putting together a tutoring program to get some of our Ruby programmers up to speed with Clojure, and we're going to be using this guide to make some REPL lesson plans. So we're pretty excited about it. The documentation is fantastic.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that we didn't already have something like this, but hey, we do now. And what I think is actually kind of interesting is like the bigger picture. I'm not sure, but I think Val is kind of relatively new to the Clojure community. I encountered him doing the Advent to Code stuff, and I'm guessing that he hasn't been doing this for that long, but he's at least in that mode where he feels the pain still of being a new Clojurian. So he knows what's missing, where he can see it still. Yeah. And I think it kind of speaks to the idea that if you see something missing, documentation is like one of the easier ways to contribute. It's not easy, right? There's a lot to do to produce. I mean, that document is awesome. So that obviously reflected a lot of work.
For sure. And imagine how much he must have learned putting this guide together, right? Talking to people and having discussions about what needs to go in it. I mean, it's work that anyone could start, even if you're not an expert on it.
I think there were some things in there that I didn't even know yet. I'm going to go reread it and review some of the tricks that are in there.
It's funny, like you start taking for granted some of like the weird stuff or like the stuff that you like kind of ad hoc things that you're doing that you don't think about documenting, like, oh, this is an issue, or oh, this should be written down somewhere. The guide's fantastic.
The thing that I thought was interesting about, I mean, again, actually, there's a lot to that guide. I mean, and it's a bit like a book almost. I haven't read all of it yet, but I did have a look at one part of it, which is to do with some gotchas to do with, like, how should you design your code to be REPL friendly? This is a really interesting subject, I think, because do we always think about that? If we're going to be REPL-driven, if we're going to do REPL-driven development, then we have to go and think about the reloaded workflows and then what component system we're going to use. And there's even like a message there, like showing the various workflows like component and integrant and mount and stuff like this. And there's some interesting hints that actually there's some discussion amongst the community about whether these are right or wrong. And I thought that was a really nice part of the guide, actually. That notion that it's not just a tool that you use, but it's a tool potentially that you design for.
Yeah, that made me feel like he must have been doing this for quite a while, because that level of insight is something that I didn't get until like a year or two into doing development. And even now I still struggle with that. Like, you have a function that you're trying to copy and paste, and then you realize, oh, it's dependent on other functions, or you have something that's, an internal closure that you can't easily test and things like that.
Or you redef it when you just do a Command Shift L or something into the REPL, and you just look, God, my server's gone, and I can't shut it down anymore.
Mm-hmm. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, that's something that people don't talk about that much. Like sometimes it'll take me, an hour just to get the thing set up so that I can work quickly in the REPL. I was working on some code yesterday, and I think it was half of the morning was just trying to get my web server so that I could start it and stop it without having to change the port every time because the other one was still running.
Well, the other interesting, I mean, I don't know if it's interesting to everyone, but one of the things that we try and target where I work now, and there's only 2 of us working on it, so we can do that. There'll soon be 3, maybe you'll have, and the idea is that whatever we're doing, if we're doing things at the CLI, or if we're doing some stuff on the blockchain now, and we're using an Apache it's an Apache blockchain, Hyperledger, and they have a Node interface onto it, so you can write chain code in Node, not just all this Solidity stuff. So you can actually write the real contracts, smart contracts in Node.js, which means, of course, we can write it in ClojureScript. So one of our objectives is everything we do, we always try and make it so we can live code at the REPL as part of that process. And that's the the bootstrap for everything we do is, number one, can we do a REPL on it? And if we can't, we spend some time getting that working first. And I would like to advise other people to do that.
I think that's good. I remember listening to a talk recently. I think it's the very same situation you were describing, a team developing some stuff in Node, and they had slipped into that mode of not being able to use the REPL. They would just kind of do the compile and test kind of pattern. And they let the whole REPL thing fall by the wayside. And it's kind of like you have to be diligent, right? You have to make sure you can always get into the REPL, and it's worth the payoff.
Yeah. I mean, because like I said, I spent half the morning trying to get it working, but then I was productive like the rest of the day, and no frustration from my coding. Usually what happens if I don't spend the time is I start getting into these long cycles of reloading and having to wait for the answer, and then it's wrong, and then I gotta change some code and then do it again, and then I've wasted more time than it took me to just get the thing set up.
Yeah, I always feel like that actually. As soon as I catch myself in that mode where, hold on, I've had to run some server, I've had to run some code, I've had to just to find one little string evaluation at the end. It's like, I'm definitely doing it I'm doing it wrong, I'm not doing it the Clojure way. What about you, Mia? I mean, are you guys all REPL'd, or are you not so much?
For the most part, it's kind of tough because we are working with Kafka and with some Kafka tools that don't really lend themselves very well to REPL-driven stuff. And probably a lot of our kind of tech debt development is oriented around building REPL tools around Kafka, because we don't really have those right now. So it sucks because like the tests that take the longest are also the ones that are the hardest to adapt to the REPL, because we have to put up Kafka, put it down. We're working on some stuff with transducers. We'll see how that goes.
So what makes Kafka awkward then? Because you can in theory embed Kafka and all these kind of things.
So we're actually losing embedded Kafka in Kafka 1.0. So we're trying to rely on it less because we're not sure what comes next. But even with embedded Kafka, like it's easy to spin it up. Like it's easy to command to spin it up, but it takes long. And then once you're in it, you've got this whole cluster set up. And if anything fails, you have to tear it down again, which once again takes a really long time. And we also have a lot of legacy services. So it's a lot of pieces. We're working on it. We're trying to. The faster we can get away from legacy stuff and into an all Kafka environment, the easier it's going to be to just do everything on the REPL.
Yeah.
So are you doing REPL on the blockchain, Ray?
Yeah, it's a private blockchain. It's using Hyperledger, and Hyperledger, the Hyperledger is a blockchain, and the contracts are exposed on it. Like the main language for it is Go, but it's now come out with version 1.1 has support for Node.js as a contract language, which means we can use ClojureScript on it.
That is pretty cool. And you can have a REPL. I mean, that's amazing. Do you have like a bunch of nodes on the network so that they can all share the
No,
ledger?
you just have one node. I mean, again, you don't do this like cluster stuff. That's, that's anti-REPL for sure, You want to have everything kind of like attached in some Docker locally, or ideally some embedded VM. But in this case, you have to go through a Docker. But yeah, I remember when I was working for this cloud company, the Swiss cloud company as well. I spent 2 weeks with the lead engineer getting embedded Cassandra working, embedded HTTP servers working, so we could do everything with the REPL. I mean, it took us 2 weeks, but then we were blasting through everything much more quickly. So I think, like you were saying, Eric, earlier on, that the rewards versus the investment are quite substantial.
Mm-hmm. And now there's a guide.
Now we need the Ray guide to blockchain on the REPL, because it just sounds like something someone would make up.
Well, I mean, you have to be careful, because it's not a public blockchain. I mean, in the public blockchains like Bitcoin and like Ethereum, they don't have that kind of modern language facilities. So yeah, so eventually when I get onto like the Ethereum stuff, then not so nice.
Can we have some Ethereum?
I haven't got any. Maybe we should have some kind of video watching competition, Oh, like REPL coin, that's a good one.
REPL coin?
We'd like to ICO. Now is the time to ICO.
Yeah. Every form you evaluate has some kind of mining facility around it.
Wait, so did you know that you were going to be doing blockchain stuff when you started working on this?
Yeah, but like I say, it was all in Go originally, and that was, it's kind of annoying to code in Go because it feels very much like C. Okay, I know C, and I can kind of get the hold of Go to do what's necessary. But again, you were back to this, right? Okay, let's write it, let's compile it, and let's deploy it, and then let's test it. And there's a lot of BS from the Go programmers, which I find hilarious, which is, if you write Go programs, it's like a REPL, because the compiler is so fast that you write your code, you compile it, and you test it. And it's just the same as REPL, basically. And I call total bullshit on that, because that is not true, That is just a total lie. So screw you, Go guys. I know you've got better tools than we've got for stack traces, and you need them.
Well, they do. I mean, they got?
There were some very nice Go tools. I accept that, and I don't want to get into a complete Go bashing zone, but go on, Mia.
Well, no, they got one of the Go guys, right, on record saying that it's there to allow new grads to just come in and write kind of idiot-proof code, which means
well, that's nonsense.
But like that was what they intended it for.
Well, they've made a huge mistake then, because Go is not a beginner's language, in my opinion, not by a long way. It's it's like a systems programming language. It's not for everyone.
Is
no
it
way.
Like C with more guardrails?
Yeah, I mean, it's got garbage collection, but it's designed, as far as I know, from. Well, okay, maybe I'm wrong now. Maybe they've revised their opinion, but the original, was it Rob Pike?
Yeah.
Or was it Kernighan? Rob Pike from Google, who was the original C guy, or one of the original C guys. And he's made this language, and you've got all this async stuff, but that and the Go blocks is very nice, but a lot of it is just to make systems programming better. He wants to write an operating system in it.
It's like a tool-first language where they focus on the compiler experience, and the issues that they had at Google, where they have like 10 million files in a repo, and every time they have to recompile something, it takes 4 hours, and they're just saying, like, let's make a better language, but mostly let's focus on all the dumb stuff that we did in C to make it so slow to compile. I think it's a great ops story, but then the language is just a little better than C.
I love that also. I mean, but let's not talk about Go. Okay. Getting off the topic. The fact is that I hated programming in Go on the blockchain, and I'm still relieved, and we've been so relieved. They've got JavaScript now, so therefore we can follow wherever JavaScript is. We can just write ClojureScript, and we've got REPLs, so we're happy, And
I think there's something about the language, the Clojure, the language. And Lisps in general, I think, where it's sort of designed to be used at the REPL. It kind of assumes that you're just like typing in code right there. And so even its notion of files, where it just like reads it and evaluates things one expression at a time, and the semantics of it are just like start at the top and just go work your way down. I think that if you don't have that in a language, like, it's just going to be inferior at the REPL. I remember using the Haskell REPL, and it was very similar. It was like anytime you wanted to really change something in the file, you had to recompile and restart your REPL, which blew away your state, and it was hard to maintain a good flow because there were like different things you had to keep in sync all the time that Clojure just makes really easy.
The idea of just having vars that you mutate and
you just def something and you're going to throw it away. It's like it's just for development time. It's not for production. All right, so we have a second topic.
I think. Sorry, go on. Yeah, Eric.
I think we're running out of time here, so let's talk about this again. Ray, this is your thing. You wanted to talk about the PREPL, the PREPL.
The PREPL. This is something which is a feature of Clojure 1.10 and ClojureScript 1.10 as well. And the PREPL is basically Rich Hickey saying, NREPL, this socket server is really good. I'm going to make a programmable REPL interface to it, and then everyone losing their shit about the fact that it's new and why doesn't he just like NREPL and why doesn't everyone stick with that? So it's a kind of always an interesting debate to me about whether or not you should go with something new or something existing. But I'll tell you why I decided to actually for this show. I'm writing a REPL that we should be able to all share, and I thought to do that I will look at what the state of tooling is for REPLs, and not being a REPL expert, what does that look like if I'm coming fresh to it, with fresh eyes. I haven't got any baggage. I've got no code. So where do I start? What's the best place to start from? And I looked at it and I thought, well, this NREPL stuff is all a bit weird, and I didn't really like it. And then I noticed that a lot of the latest stuff why didn't I like it? I guess first question. Well, it has weird things like you have to set behaviors, and there are certain ways in which the data is set, and the things are morphed that I find odd. It's not obvious to me how all these interactions occur and how you stack middleware on top of each other. It's meant to be like Ring middleware, but it's not quite like that. It seems a bit random how these things get stacked together. So I didn't like that side of it. And then I noticed also that people like Bruce Howman and those guys, they were using WebSockets rather than the NREPL. And then they have all these like bridging things between the NREPL and WebSockets. And then there's this socket server at the back, which is almost for free. And then, so we have these other guys like Christophe Legrand, who is a very keen REPL enthusiast. And he is doing this thing called unREPL. And I looked at that and I thought, yeah, this is interesting. And I like some of the tools that they've got on the front end for like being able, because they want to try and make it async, so they can make it so that the client can stop things at the back end. So if you have if you invoke range, for example, you can, it will only consume a certain amount, then it will kill it at the back end if you wanted to. And it has all kinds of nice things to make things speed up across the socket, and very low level things. But the thing that put me off on REPL and all that kind of stuff was that they have this thing called a blob. I looked at this
and you saw this movie once. You're like, I'm not touching that thing.
You've got this thing called the blob. I mean, I don't know. It's literally it's they call it the upgrade blob or something. You send this blob somewhere and it does something, and then magic happens. I just thought, yeah, right.
I think
it could be awesome. I mean, just. I don't know. I just didn't like that.
Have you described PREPL yet? I don't know if you went and described. If you compare PREPL to, if you compare it to SocketRepple, the description you could fit in a sentence or two, right?
Yeah. So let's list those off. So we have the SocketRepple.
And yeah, for those who don't know what that is, that's easy to describe.
Okay, go on. Yeah.
It's just, as I understand it, it's just like you can telnet into your Clojure.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it. You've described it. Okay. It's text-based. Yeah.
And which goes back to like what I was saying before, where like Clojure is designed to just take in text and turn it into S expressions and then eval them and then print it.
Yeah.
And, I remember hearing a story that Rich Hickey still uses inferior Lisp mode in Emacs, which is it's an Emacs mode that does REPL integration, but basically all it does is communicates by sending text over telnet, and then gets an answer, and then it ships that telnet over telnet back and displays it in Emacs. And instead of having a huge, mode like Cider that has a bunch of stuff, like it understands Clojure code really well, but also has a connection with NREPL and installs its own middleware and does all that stuff. He prefers to have a much cleaner, direct connection to the running Clojure instance.
So one problem you run into with SocketRepple right away, if you're trying to write a tool that will read the results, that's all cool until you print something.
Right.
And then the printing, is arbitrary. So that leads to PREPL, if you wanted to describe that in terms of the minor difference, is that it simply sends you Eden back.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about it, actually, is that it just gives you back. It says, okay, this is the form that you sent me. This is the result that I'm sending you back.
Mm-hmm.
But then what about the print?
The print is also another Eden. It's another Eden that indicates as its tag as being, this is a print rather than a result. That's the only difference, really.
Yeah.
So instead of you getting back strings that you have to read, you just get Eden that's got a little bit more metadata wrapping it all up.
Yeah, but that makes it a lot, from my perspective, that makes it a lot more straightforward to manipulate, to consume, because data wins basically. And then like for instance, with this this tool that I'm building, I wanted to colorize the syntax, and it was trivial to do that. Then I just pass the original form, colorize it, and send it back out. It was really easy. I didn't need to do any like middleware stuff. I just called a function, and that was very obvious then what was going on to me. And if I just want to send back some more data, I just put just a source on this data structure, and away I go.
So is there a lesson to learn here? Is there some principle involved? Like why is this simpler thing that basically does less than NREPL, has way fewer moving parts, probably like less indirection. I don't know. Is there some principle there?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's two things. Number one, I think, on one hand, the thing about NREPL that's nice is you've got an ecosystem, but it's an ecosystem which is really based around editors, not around browsers. So for me, the ecosystem wasn't worth much, because you don't have that many browser REPLs that aren't just ClojureScript and ClojureScript, and there's not very many of them. I think 2 maybe. So there's not. So this NREPL stuff didn't offer much value to me, but for some people it would. They like the blob. I think sometimes it's like the principle is tricky to be general about, but I think when you go there with fresh eyes and if it's green field, let's say, then you should pick the simplest tool, I think.
Yeah, and is there an example of an NREPL middleware that would, like, I can't imagine what I would want to use one for. So is there something that's there? Like, why doesn't Cider just send text to the socket,
Well, if you want to colorize things, for example.
But you want to colorize it in the Clojure VM?
Well, in the middleware, that's what they do. They do it in the middleware.
So Cider's colorizing is done in the JVM. It's not done in Emacs,
I guess. I don't know, to be honest. I don't know anything about Cider. So, but that's often the case. Is there's some middleware that does something. Either does some like this Repl Readline actually is a bit of middleware, isn't it? That allows you to like do history and stuff like that.
We've got a couple suggestions. Intercepting ClojureScript is done in the middleware. CLJ Refactor is NREPL middleware based.
And so, but what does it do that you couldn't just do by sending commands to the?
Well, what it's doing, like, it's adding functions. It's adding functionality to the editor that doesn't come from the data. That's what it's trying to do. It's trying to basically bolster the editor facilities.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is why do you need? So I assume that what it does is it's something that captures the input from the editor, and the middleware will selectively say, "Oh, that's for me," and I'm going to do something with that, or just let it pass through to the next middleware.
Yeah, that's what it does.
Why can't the editor just say, compile this ClojureScript?
Huh?
Why can't the editor say, please colorize this code for me, and just pass that to the JVM to the REPL, instead of having like code installed in there that does that with some kind of protocol? And
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think the idea is to kind of share this code, to reuse it. But
okay,
I found it awkward to use, because there's some of the stuff in the middleware. It seems to be a bit of a mix between like the editors, like, well, which bits of middleware supports Emacs and which bit supports Vim, which bit supports Atom. I guess there are some things which are like viable for all of them, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think one advantage of something simpler like PREPL is if you're on the other end and you're trying to implement the protocol, it's almost trivial to implement
Right.
PREPL. So I think that's what made it really easy for ClojureScript 110 to add PREPL support, because you just spit out some Eden. If Plonk or Lumo wanted to support that protocol, it's pretty much done. You could just add it. But to support something like NREPL, you're like, man, now I need to learn this complex protocol and implement it somehow. So maybe there's an advantage of just ease of implementation, and perhaps even from the client end, if you want to drive something that understands PREPL, it seems pretty trivial to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, people say things in the chat there saying it's all the same if you're using different editors, but that's not how I experienced it as a user anyway.
It was actually really hard switching from cursive to Emacs, trying to figure out the REPL configuration.
Yeah, so there was in terms of general principles, I was saying to Mike earlier that a guy I used to work with didn't last that long, but he was like a consultant at a big company I used to work for a few years ago, and his view was, right, you can either have old code or new code, and I'm going to take all the code I'm going to take is new code. I'm only ever going to use new code. It's always better. And there are some people, who are the mainframe developers or whatever, who were like, well, this thing's been working for 20 years. What the fuck? Leave it alone. It's fine. It works. Why do you want to do this internet thing? Why no? This is all this IBM kick stuff, the DB2, it all works. What do you want to use Oracle for?
Same thing happens if you try to. Sorry.
No, go on, Mike.
If you see a library out there, right, and you're assessing it and trying to decide whether or not to use it, and you haven't seen any commits in the past 3 years, what does that mean to you? It could be a good thing, right? That it's like stable.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I remember this discussion. Someone showed some code, and they're like, "Is this good code?" And no one raised their hands, and they said, "Well, but what if I told you it's been running in production for 25 years unchanged?" And then it's like, now is it good code? But then maybe it hasn't been changed because it's so bad.
Yeah, we have code that's been running. Yeah, we don't change it because what if we change it and everything breaks?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think there's a fine line there, because, like, in some cases, you want a growing company is going to want to be redoing their code all the time, and so you want to make it easy to throw away the old code so that you only have, because code is a liability. The more code that you're responsible for is the worse you are, right? And you're probably better off redeveloping everything every few years than keeping this old stuff running forever.
It's one of the arguments for microservices, which is, well, it's a total nightmare to run microservices. Actually, they're kind of a total nightmare, really. From a just getting going perspective.
Not with Kafka.
Even with Kafka, I mean, I'm sorry, but it's kind of like the notion that you have to have like 20 microservices all in their own scalable, auto-scalable groups just to do like one workflow item is crazy. But what they do is they give you this concept of being able to throw away these microservices very easily. And that's a very attractive approach for this like evergreen thing that you're talking about, Eric. Where people say, how do we get to throw these things away? Well, you design them to be small throwaway parts at the very beginning. And then you can actually throw them away. I mean, this notion of disposable code becomes quite plausible then.
Right. Like people talk about, there's a guy I really like, Fred George. He was talking about this microservices where the code is usually so small that it doesn't even matter if anyone else can understand it. Because if you need to make a change to it, just rewrite it in whatever you want. Because it's so little code. Just make it, just start over. You're not going to gain anything by like tweaking what exists. of course, to get the architecture where that kind of thing is possible, where like you got the services are so decoupled that you can just spin one up and it doesn't even matter if one doesn't come up or something. That's really hard, but of course sounds really nice too. Okay, we're over time on our news discussion, so we're going to switch to the REPL. If you're listening in the audio version, we're going to end now. But if you're still hearing me, it means you're watching on YouTube. So you can watch us on YouTube and enjoy us doing stuff at the REPL, flailing a little bit. So I'm going to bring up the REPL here. Boom. And we have a couple problems we're going to work on.
Yeah.
Oh, first thing is that we switched to Repl Readline. Got to mention that.
Oh, yeah.
Who wants to talk about that for a moment? What is Repl Readline?
Has anyone?
I think you installed it, didn't you, Mike?
Okay, so
it could be.
So first of all, you can talk about what is a read line, right? It's if you don't have that, it's painful to because you can't even use like arrow keys to move back and forth or up and down through your history.
Right.
And I think to me the coolest thing about Repl Readline is the ability to edit multi-line forms. That to me is the killer feature. I'm sure there's other things that people like, but the idea there is like we were doing last time. If you want, or we've all done several times, is you have to. If you have a mistake in the middle of a multi-line form, what do you do then, right? You Control C or whatever, and you start over, and you go back up to the top and enter the first. Yeah, and then you get to the form the line you were on, and that's must have been like the way it was before you had like screen editors and you edited on a teletype machine or something like that, And now, when VI finally came out, people were amazed. You could move around. So that's what Repl Readline gives you, is the ability to move around in your form and edit it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
That's one thing it does.
I mean, isn't it cool? I've been just typing away while you've been talking, Mike, just to show people some stuff that it does, like the fact that you have multi-line, that you have matching paren stuff. It indents your code for you. It even shows you documentation as you type. And it apparently has autocomplete. I don't know if I've used that yet. So it's a lot of the stuff that like you would get from a connected REPL, a browser. I mean, sorry, an editor connected to a REPL, but it's all there in the terminal. And I actually have a lot of hope for this. That one of the biggest complaints that I've heard of from people who have left Clojure, they got fed up with it, was that they heard all this great stuff about the REPL and how much better the development was, but that it always required too much buy-in on an editor. Only like 2 or 3 editors would actually give you that power that people would talk about. And this, to me, seems like it could get you 80 to 90% of the way there. And so you could use whatever editor you wanted and Repl Readline like next to it, and you'd be 90% of the way there. And for someone who's just like giving Clojure a try, or just needs to do a little work in Clojure, doesn't want to spend a week setting up an editor and figuring out all the keystrokes and stuff, like this is great. I think it's going to change the game. Like, I don't know, I have fantasies that this is like finally going to solve the curse of Lisp, but maybe that's too far.
So you're not subjected to like par edit or par infer, you're not like those higher level concepts, you're not being subjected to that. You can still just move around and edit. And it just it's kind of intuitive, I guess. You just make changes where you'd like, and does it balance your parentheses for you?
But it shows you which one it's matching.
That's good enough. Yeah, for brand new users, that's fine. Yeah.
So if I go if I do this, it'll boop. You see it kind of jumps over there. Boop.
Yeah. That's so perfect for new users. Yeah.
You can see as I close. Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's not doing the rainbow paren stuff, but it's giving you a little bounce.
Right.
Well, and you can probably set up rainbow parens, maybe not, but you can, according to Angus, you can design your own color themes. So it's possible that option is coming.
I think rainbow parens is something else, though.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
it's a package you can install. Maybe you can make it for this.
You see that? Oh my goodness, this is so nice.
I like the fact that the function notes are at the bottom. That's nice.
Oh, and like the error message wasn't too bad, huh? It shows you the error instead of a big stack trace.
Good, we've solved Clojure.
We're done. Like
We're done.
we're complaining about it. There's nothing to complain about anymore. All you need is a Bruce Howman, and you're good.
That's all it takes. Yeah.
Okay, so don't we have a problem to work on after this?
I had
elements.
a little problem a while ago. Maybe I'll explain the problem actually, and I've got an answer, but maybe it's just not the best answer. So I can do my trick at the end and just paste my answer in, and I can torture you guys in the meantime as to what. Maybe you get it better answer than me, which is always nice as well. So the problem was that it was a bigger problem, but the general problem is that I wanted to pick essentially two elements from a list, but those two elements must be random, but they mustn't be repeated. So like rand nth is very good for a collection, yeah. So if you do rand nth twice, you might get the same item twice, yeah,
Right.
because of random. So you want to do, okay, give me 3 random elements and make sure they're all different. Make sure
Is it the value that has to be distinct, or is it the index that has to be distinct?
Yeah, the element.
The value.
The value has to be
data.
distinct.
So just think
The
of
data,
numbers.
okay. Yep.
So think you've got range to 1,000, and you want to pick 3 random numbers from that range. Now you might just get 10, 10, 10, yeah? But
okay, yeah.
Was that it?
That sounds like that's the problem definition. So you have a collection and you have to pick 2.
yeah, so let's what does shuffle do then? What does shuffle do, Eric?
Shuffle puts it in a random order. The elements of the collection.
So if the elements themselves weren't distinct to start off with, like if it wasn't a range, you could fix that as well, right? You could throw in a distinct or something like that in the middle of that.
Wait, so you're saying something like if I had...
Like the collection itself was fundamentally had duplicates to start off with. Yeah.
So like that.
Okay, yep.
To take number. So if I took 2 things out of here, they might be the same.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you shuffled them.
With the problem definition?
No, but if you get 2, then they're the same. You don't want that. They need to be distinct. So the shuffle is the right answer. But the problem is, what if they're not? If the actual collection is not unique?
Sorry, I'm flailing at this REPL thing.
Yeah, so set, I thought of set as well, because...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it compresses it into a set of distinct.
But then you'd have to shuffle, right? You always have to throw that in there to get the randomness. Yeah. Okay, so that was that solves it, but I was also thinking of a slight twist where you would use the distinct function. Putting the distinct outside of the shuffle. Let me try that. Let me switch it to that.
Oh, okay.
Rid of the set and then put the distinct out here. Does that sound? I don't know if that's correct or
How
not.
do we know if it's working? Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Hey, okay, so this is good learning. How do you get doc if you're missing doc? Everyone needs to know this one.
Clojure.repl refer all.
Yeah, really need to.
REPL load every time you open a REPL.
it's a transducible thing. Oh, that's cool. I was wondering what the zero arity was.
So I think the only real difference between the distinct solution and the set solution is perhaps the distinct solution keeps the order of the shuffled stuff, which is not necessary, right? You don't need that. The order is not important.
You're gonna shuffle it.
It could
anyway.
be though. It could
But
be.
I don't know. I would argue that maybe if you say, does it line up with Ray's problem description? I want 3 distinct things from this thing randomly. It's nice that the functions you're using match up with the words you use to describe the problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think set is a somewhat nicer concept than distinct.
It's mathematically very nice.
Yeah.
I think
The other-
distinct
the other-
probably uses a set inside, right? If you looked at its implementation.
I don't know.
Right.
Because it's a transducer. Maybe it's stateful, actually. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a stateful transducer, and it works on lazy sequences, which is nice, but you're about to, take 3, and when you shuffle it, it can't be lazy anymore.
Right.
Unfortunately,
you're
wouldn't that
moving
be
ahead as
cool?
soon as you do that. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool if you could shuffle it and it stayed lazy? I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, if you have to do it so that the set has to be formed, so you can take 3 from it at the end.
I guess you could write a lazy seek solution. That sounds more challenging, right? Where you would make like a recursive solution that keeps getting more stuff that's distinct until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and also randomizing it.
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah. Which would be cool, except probably not worth it.
No, given that we
This
have like a
one is
3-line
pretty good.
solution. Yeah,
One-line solution.
1-line solution. Yeah.
But I noticed that you didn't go point free there. You went point free there, Eric. What's that all about? Because
I
we
went
were
point
talking about
free?
style last time, about where your arrow should go. Because you've done it like, you've got a value, then you've done it kind of like point free, rather than the arrow styly.
So put in a set, shuffle it, and now see I'm at the wrong. Take 3. What happened?
Huh?
There we go.
What did happen there, actually?
Maybe it's a bug.
Hiccup. Bug. Step FN 41.
That's one of the lines from the source for distinct.
I got mixed up.
Okay.
Or beta testing.
Bruce, take note. You can
Yeah, come on,
reproduce
Bruce.
this by-
Yeah. So, but it's interesting to me that I preferred your original solution because I thought it was more obvious than this one.
Yeah, I think if I put them vertically, it might be better. But
Because again, it's like I was saying, and you kind of got caught out a bit with this, like, is it the 1 arrow or 2 arrows thing?
right. Didn't matter until the last one.
That's
I
right.
hadn't thought that far ahead.
Well, that's fine. It was easy to fix, but
Now
it's
shuffle
interesting. It's interesting. Yeah.
the shuffle? Yeah, I was wondering if there was a shuffle transducer, because then you could do this as a total transducer, right? Because if you could do a shuffle transducer, which is kind of what we were talking about, making a lazy shuffle. Distinct can make a transducer. Distinct. Also, take can be a transducer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
What does shuffle do then? Let's have a quick look at shuffle.
It probably delegates to Java, right?
Yeah, it does. It makes the Java array.
Okay.
Oh, nice! And then it converts it into a vector.
Yep.
But what if your collection is gigantic?
Yeah.
You got to shuffle the whole thing. It'd be nice if you could just like pick out 2, like if you only wanted 2 out of 3 million things, performance reasons.
Right.
Yeah, because what I did was I did a loop recur actually. rather than doing a shuffle, I just said rand nth into the thing. So
Rand nth and take it out.
Rand nth, put it into a set. And
yeah, you
then,
could repeatedly rand nth until you get enough.
Well, do repeatedly then. I did it a loop, but you could do
let me try
repeatedly,
that.
I suppose. Yeah.
This is just Tmux, Kyle.
I'm just going to make a collection there. An infinite collection, right?
Yeah.
And if you
just take 3 or something. Oh yeah, distinct take 3. Okay.
Yeah. But if you've got like 1,000,000 ones and 1 2, you might never end. I mean, who could figure out how long it'll take to end?
But if you make that, just make it range, in fact, because then that will be fun. No, just rand nth work on range.
No, it only works on index
fixed
things.
Thing, yeah. So, but if you made it like range max integer or something,
I think that this is what is that called? The selection problem. There's some problem in mathematics
or something like that.
You can't take a random element from an infinite set, something like that, because you don't really know what's in there. Some people think you can, and some people think you can't.
I think nth works on range. Just to go back to that point, because it will be ON for anything that it can't do. Like nth is actually indexed, right? Or at least it wants the thing to be indexed.
Yeah, nth will work on a seek. Yeah,
but it just gets slower at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so if you did it on a gigantic range, it could really be bad in terms of computational.
You might as well throw it into a vector first.
Which is, I guess, why they use the shuffle. Yeah. Okay.
You never can beat that linear growth. Turns into quadratic real fast.
Yeah.
So let's try the rand nth on range then, because then we've got how does that?
That's nice.
Rand nth.
I like your keyboard.
Yeah, it's very mechanical. Yeah.
Sorry about the bloody noisy.
Ooh, on an infinite range?
Sorry.
I don't know if you can do that. Let's see.
I've got this.
Oh, dude.
Burning the machine.
Did the fan
I'm gonna stop that.
Come back in.
I don't know what the D was. Yeah. What's this? Takes a while. Okay.
So
just do rand nth range. Let's see just that little piece.
All right.
So it needs to count it first, right? Rand nth will first count the collection, which would be infinite.
Yeah, it's not going to work. Yeah.
Angus is telling us rand nth works on range.
But I mean an infinite range.
Infinite range. Yeah, that's right. Because range. Yeah, if you range 1,000, there's no problem there. Yeah? Oh, for fuck's sake.
It's surprisingly
Repl Readline is really awesome.
You got to go to the end.
I know that now. God.
Okay.
So rand nth will actually work on range in ClojureScript because you can get the count of an infinite range.
How do you get the count of an infinite range?
Because it lies. Yeah, it gives you some big number. Yeah. Which is wrong. Yeah.
What should it do? What is the correct answer? Should it just never return? Lock up your browser.
Yeah, the other question I had about this, by the way, is like there's a few things about testing this problem that are quite interesting, I think. Like just on a very trivial level, yeah. Let's say that you have like on this thing that Mike had with this this call, yeah, and then we say take 3. Oh, yeah, okay, we didn't define it again. Because I
You can
killed the session.
R and go back.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So we take 3 there, get to the end. And look, yeah. Now, what if I do there? If I just do something wacky, like I take 6, it's not going to work very well. Oops! Crashed the REPL again. Sorry about that. Okay. So the interesting question is, like, what is our thoughts about the best way to avoid this? Yeah, because I was thinking, like, in the good old days, you would have this like a little assertion type thing at the beginning. So can we just have some thoughts on that one? Now with spec, you might do something different, you know. But
I think with this is perfect for property-based testing. Just say, generate me some random collections. You know, give me a random number of random elements from it, and it would find that really fast. And in fact, it would probably do something like, say, take 1 from an empty collection, and if it never ends.
that's to reduce. Don't you think though it might? Because what we've just done here is prove that it's hard. In some respects, the fact that it will take forever. How does the spec work on that? The property-based testing, because it's always. How does it know what's failed actually?
Yeah, you'd have to wrap something around it saying
it's not perfect anymore, in my opinion.
No. Well, it's not. No, I mean,
it's a guard is better, because in this case, you know what the problem is. You know that the number of things that you want back out of that collection should be smaller than the number of things you put into the collection. The items that you want must be smaller than the count of the collection.
But
that's the property.
I don't agree that you shouldn't. I mean, like, take will give you up to that number, right? Like, if you have take 4 or 1, 2, like, it'll just give you 1 and 2. Yeah. So I don't know. Is this wrong? Is this right? I think that this is the.
Well, I'd say it's wrong given the semantics of the function I described, because you want to take n elements from a collection that must be bigger than n elements. I mean,
but you're right. Should it throw an exception? Should it throw an exception?
Well, it's an interesting question. To me, I would say that it should either throw an exception or just give you back the list like it has here. I think your mileage may vary as to which one is. It depends on the context, which you should do, I guess.
But see, I don't know if you can do this, because what you're saying, like, can you get the count of this list here? Let me copy paste. Can you get the count of this in the general case? Because they might not be distinct. There might not be. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if it. Look, I'll do it.
Yeah, what you're saying is the actual result of this might end up with a collection that is only, the set might be smaller than the size, which is why I think you probably shouldn't throw an exception, because if essentially you're kind of doing a distinct in the middle of the function, aren't you? That's what you're saying. So until you do that distinct, you don't know.
And when you do the distinct, because repeatedly is infinite, you're never going to end.
The distinct will keep running. Yeah,
it'll just block, and so you can't get a count of it.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to demonstrate that with there.
Block,
it's not ending. Over. Yeah, so I don't know. I think the best thing to do is just say we don't do infinity. We don't do infinite lists, and just throw it in a vector, shuffle it, I don't know. That's I think it removes all of these doubts. I think it is interesting, though, also to talk about whether it's solving the problem if the numbers are wrong, right? If you ask for too many.
Well, I think there are certain things where you know automatically. I mean, it's one condition, isn't there? Like if you ask for take 4 from 2, then it's definitely wrong semantically. What you're saying is there could be a collection with all 1s and a 2, in which case there's only 2 in the collection. So you don't find that out until you're in the middle of the code.
Right. So
Yeah.
you'd have to do
So-
something like this: assert count s is greater than or equal to n.
I have to go. I broke production.
Hey, good job.
An infinite sequence in production. Yeah.
during the show, yeah, it's really awesome.
No, I broke it a long time ago, but everyone's just noticed.
That's how I roll.
25 years
Yeah.
ago.
Break
Gotta
it and
use
go
a
to
new code
lunch.
there.
All right.
All right. Well, we're up.
See you, Mia.
Time's up anyway, I think. So that's really been good. Yeah.
How's that one that I just did? So you get the distinct stuff first with set,
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
and then you can assert that you have enough, and then you take them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty safe. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. But I would say you also should have at the beginning that if you say a count of col is greater than n as well. So you'd have it in 2 places.
Have it? You think twice is better?
Yeah. Because then you fail fast, don't you? You don't need to make a set out of it.
That's true, but you still have to check again because it might be all
True.
ones.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, maybe you're just too dry to have that assert there twice.
Well,
Is
yeah,
that what you're
and
saying? Does it
I
offend
also
you
think
to
that-
have it twice?
yeah, I would like to have maybe separate it rand up to n, like.
Oh yeah, that would be more. The name would be better then. Yeah, that's true.
So then it would be like we did before.
Yeah.
And then I would have another thing that did the check that was
Right.
safer, because I like to have this seems like a reasonable unit to me to have as its own thing. Always be pulling things apart.
No, I like it. It's a very good, good concept. Yeah.
Then of course you might be making 2 sets. I don't know.
Looks like we lost Ray.
Oh yeah. Well,
We were pretty much wrapping things up anyway. So
yeah, we're at time. So thanks everybody for coming. Just remember, the robots who are watching, even though they can understand our words, they don't have any emotions. So you need to help them feel by clicking thumbs up or thumbs down, whatever feelings you have. You can share those with the machines. And so subscribe, like, comment, star, do everything that the machines need to learn your emotions, and help them share those emotions with other people in their artificial intelligence way. Thank you, everybody. See you later.
later on.